tonight. And I don't just say that, but I talked to Taylor, I think it was last week or the week before, and I told Taylor, I spoke into her life, and she's gonna hopefully be interning with us in the next, over the next few months. And I told her, and I told some leaders this too, I see so much of myself inside of Taylor when I was her age. The passion of God that's inside of her life, the leadership at such a young age that's in her life, and the fact that she's not afraid what anybody thinks about her. She's like, I'm going to take people to heaven with me. And she carries that passion of God inside of her. So I want you right now, this is my passion right here, for sons and daughters to carry the mantle. I want you to give it up for Taylor Browning. She's going to come and bring the word to you tonight.
Why God? How many of y'all have asked that question before? I can't be the only one. Ever since I was little, that has been like the biggest question probably in my vocabulary. Everything happens, trials come, storms come. We face deep waters and we don't know what to do. And all we can say is, why God? And growing up, I always thought that asking God questions meant I was doubting him. And so I thought that made me a bad Christian. So I would try to avoid that question, even though deep down inside my heart, that was the biggest question. And as over quarantine, God really showed me that asking God questions does not make you a bad Christian. And I was led to the story of Job. And most of us are familiar with that story. Job was a very wealthy man. He had a big house, lots of crops and animals, a big family. He was very blessed by God. And one day, he lost everything. His children died, his animals died, all of his crops were gone. His whole life was completely gone. And his wife told him to curse God and die. Everyone thought he was crazy because he held on to his faith. He didn't doubt God. Yes, he had questions. Of course, if you put yourself in Job's shoes, Job obviously wasn't this happy person, oh, it's okay. No, he obviously had questions and was like, God, I don't understand. But in his questions, he still trusted and held on to the word and held on to what God told him to. And I think I try my best to apply my life to Job's story, to Job's life. It's not easy. And God never promised that life would be easy. Never one time did he say that. But he did promise that he will be with us through every step that we go through. Any storm, any trial, any sickness that we go through, he's there, he's with us. Even though it's so much easier said than done to be oh, it's okay, yeah, so much is happening in my life, it's fine, I'll just trust God. It's not that easy when you walk through storms. You have mental breakdowns, you feel like everything is crashing down. But we have to stay faithful. And I think the biggest, the time in my life where I started asking why God was when I was 8 years old and I lost my best friend to cancer. And as an 8-year-old little girl, that's not something that you can cope with or function with. And it took me about till last year to realize that God had a plan, because from 8 years old to 15, I was so not mad at God, but confused. God, why would you let that happen? She was only 9 years old, and she was a precious girl. I saw the call of God on her life, but cancer took her. And so as an 8-year-old little girl, that was not easy for me to cope with. And it took me about till last year to realize that God had a plan. He was with me and her family through everything. And there's a song, it says, we trust him even when we don't understand. Because it's not our jobs to understand why things happen, whether we like it or not. It's only our jobs to trust him. And I think the biggest season that I've asked God why is the season I'm walking through right now. And not many people know, because I don't really like to open up about it, but for about a year and a half, I have been having some health complications, and I went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they cannot figure out what's wrong. And living every day in pain is scary. Not knowing why you wake up hurting, not knowing why you can't play sports anymore. It's really scary. And so there's so many times I get in my room and I just cry and I'm like, God, why do I have to go through this? And I see other people going through stuff and I'm like, God, why? Why do we have to suffer? And God has really grabbed hold of me. And when I asked him God, why? He just asked me, he's like, do you trust me? And I'm like, well, yeah, I trust you, but I want to know why. And he's like, no, there's no buts. It's either you trust me or you're not. There's no in between. And I think, so many times we want to know why, and we're like, God, it's okay for me to say, but yeah, I trust you, but I'm still sick. But I'm still failing in this part of my life. My grandma isn't healed, and there's so many things. But really, those are excuses for why we don't want to trust God. And God's like, I don't want excuses. It's either you trust me or you don't. And we have to realize that he has a plan for this. And God told me, he said, you need to stop focus on your healing. You need to focus on the healer. So many times we get caught up in focusing on what we need, but we're not focusing on what we need. He is the person that he satisfies every need that we have, but we get so caught up in looking at the storm around us. And it's just like Peter. Peter, when he was walking on water because he trusted God, he was walking, his eyes were on Jesus, but the moment he saw the storm around him, he began to sink. And I believe that all of us, so many people are just like Peter. We're trusting God and we're getting through, we're walking, but the moment that we take our eyes off Jesus and look at the storm and be like, but God, this is happening and that's happening, we begin to sink. But Pastor Dusty, he preached a message a few weeks ago, and he said, notice that the very thing that sinks us under, Jesus is already standing on top of. When Peter, fell under the water, Jesus was still on top of the water. Jesus is on top of every pain, every suffering, and every sorrow that we have. And I know it's so much easier said than done. And after I preach, we go home and something happens, and our natural instinct is to be like, oh my gosh, why? God, are you here? But it takes self-discipline. And one of my favorite sayings is the pain of regret is worse than the pain of discipline. Sometimes it's so hard to discipline ourselves to do something, but the pain of regretting that we didn't is even worse. And when I spent so many years, doubting God and questioning him when my best friend died of cancer, but all those years I look back now and I'm like, I spent so much time being sad about that, and I realize now that being sad is a waste of time because I could have just been focusing on God that whole time and being like, Lord, you have a plan for this? You're going to deliver me from this? One of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understandings, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. We are called to trust him no matter what, even if it's not easy. The Bible doesn't say only trust him when your life is perfect and you're like, thank you God for blessing me. No. Job is a perfect example of trusting in the storm. I think we all need to have faith like Job, because we all know the end story. God blessed him twice as much as with what he had before because he simply trusted. And I have the definition of trust. It's to have confidence and hope, having a confident expectation of something, reliance on the integrity, strength, ability of a person or thing. So we are called to have confidence and hope in the Lord. As I was preparing for this message, God spoke to me, and he was like, it's really sad that my people trust the chairs that they sit in more than they trust more than they trust me. Just think about it. Y'all all sat down in these chairs, not even questioning, oh, is this gonna break? But whenever we go to God, we're like that, and God is way much bigger than that chair. God is way much bigger than anything on this earth that we can trust in. So many times we trust in medications and we trust in other stuff, and God's just sitting there like, okay, I'm here, like, you can trust me. And I think, like I said at the beginning, I always thought that asking God questions made me a bad Christian. But God spoke to me and was like, asking me questions doesn't make you a bad Christian. It makes you a child going to your father asking, Dad, why?
And you know, as kids, we go to our parents and we're like, why? Why did this happen? And they don't always respond with a definite answer. Sometimes it's just because I said so. And we trust them because we know that they know something that we don't know, but we trust that they have it all put together. And why isn't it like that with God? Why isn't it like when we ask God, like, why? And if he responds with, because I said so, we should be okay with it. Because he knows what's going to happen in the future. We don't. We're so caught up in what's happening right now. But we are called to keep our eyes above the waves, above the storm. Because he is on the other side and he has a plan and he's walking with us every step. And it doesn't make you a bad Christian to doubt. Even the mother of Jesus had doubts. Jesus even had doubts on the cross. Doubts are natural. It's our natural, human flesh desire to doubt, but we have to trust. Philippians 4:6 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests known to God. And so in closing, I just wanted to encourage y'all and let y'all know that it's a choice to doubt and it's a choice to believe. So what are you going to choose? Are you going to choose to believe or are you going to choose to doubt?